a couple of match points in, as this is actually the first time that Venezuela is playing in the group stage. So already they had a great achievement here for the country and for the team. Joshua will bring some more rain. we just had a look at what some of the other matches looked like, and I saw there was a lot of Pelipper and Archelodon, and there's going to be more of that. So yeah, let's see if Fernando will be ready for it, but it is a version of this 2-2-2 Dondozo team that we've already seen having a little bit of success both in online tours and also in offline tournaments.
Yeah, Dondozo Tatsugiri, making an appearance in this case. Honestly, if I was able to see this team without open team sheet, I would have probably assumed there's a potential Surf Dozo because of the Pelipper, in a more like closed team sheet scenario. But no, it's just like a traditional Dozo with Wave Crash and Earthquake, but that actually doesn't have Order Up. It has Heavy Slam, and it's actually a Terra Steel version, which is let's say it's a Terra option that I have seen recently just becoming a little bit more popular instead of the traditional Terra Grass. Maybe it has some kind of like importance in this match. We also see a Tatsugiri that is not holding a Choice Scarf, is also Safety Goggles with the Pelipper Chalodon combo, also in this DD Mail with Sneasler. And we move on into Fernando Albuquerque's also team sheet. Fernando being also a Portugal representation here with some previous accomplishments. It was a World Cup competitor for Portugal in 2023, participating in the UIC 2024, also belonging to special event, also a player finishing with 6-3 record in 2024. And we see his team is a team that we're very familiar because this is a team that actually was showcased early in a match today in the first round between Jamie Rodriguez and Federico Hamparesi. And also is a team that a lot of you probably are familiar from home, if you're watching from home, because this is a team that Marco Silva used to actually play against his friend Federico in the the regional final that we just had a couple of days ago in Gdansk. Is a Sun team. We're gonna have a Sun versus Rain match here at Weather War, Marcus.
Yeah, and of course, with some of these matchups, the first thing that I would be looking for is, okay, where's the counterplay for Dondozo? And, well, there's one very obvious answer. We have the Clear Smog on the Torkoal. But Terra Steel, of course, that could be one way to get around that. But then if you Terra Steel, you really have to watch out because there's a lot of firepower on this team, quite literally. And also the ground-type attacks coming out from the Ursaluna. So, what do you think? Do you think Dondozo is a strong pick against this type of team?
It's gonna be tough. If I would, let's say, I would have to decide here, I would probably bench Dondozo at least for one game, just trying to play with the other part. But Dondozo is really strong. It is a Pokemon that demands a lot of respect, and even though there is a Clear Smog Torkoal, if you're experienced Dondozo player, you probably have some approaches that you can maybe try to go for in situations like this. This is going to be a very intense match. Weather Wars are always very fun to watch and fun to cast as well. Remember, we have the Pelipper versus Torkoal. This Jumpluff with no damaging moves, similar to the one we saw in the first match, is a version that a lot of players have been getting used to without having any damaging move. But as we said earlier, if you have all these powerhouses next to Jumpluff, you probably can be okay without a damaging move if everything else in your team is so powerful. And we're going to jump into the first match. We see Jumpluff and Charizard actually being here. The lead is just going to go immediately for that raw firepower. There's no weather yet. Both players probably opting to bench their weather setters a little bit in this first turn because they can obviously have the option to switch thing at some point. We do see also Sneasler with the Psychic Seed activated and indeed Mail also for Joshua's side.
Yeah, so this Sneasler definitely will enjoy both the special defense boost against this Charizard and also the added speed, because now even if there was some sort of Chlorophyll switch in, Darklo would go first, and there it is, and it is just a clean one-hit knockout. Big plays here by Joshua on this first turn.
Yeah, because of the inverted boost, I think Sneasler is almost guaranteed to be faster than that Jumpluff. Maybe if Sneasler is adamant, the Jumpluff is jolly, or if it's trained in a different way. But if it's traditional Sneasler, it was always guaranteed to outspeed the Jumpluff. But there was no drastic decision from Jumpluff to maybe try to avoid being one-hit KO by the Darklo. And we see Expanding Force, Heat Wave also from the Charizard. Charizard's still there, Indeed is still there. Everything is going well for Joshua in this turn 1. We see a Porygon also here for Fernando, activated download, is getting an attack boost. So it might not be that, let's say, appealing here in this context. Sneasler is looking great against his two Pokemon. Charizard is unable to move first, and Porygon obviously is weak to close combat, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a sterilization here from Porygon.
Yeah, big plays from the Sneasler on the first turn, getting the one-hit knockout with the Direct Claw and also avoiding this Heat Wave. And now Joshua has to make a choice here. Do you want to try and go for this Imprison that is on the Indeedee Mail? Because, yeah, well, it's already at such low HP, but I think I like the choice that Joshua is going for. He says, okay, well, I can go for the Imprison even if that Porygon 2 attacks. Like, that's fine. I just want to make sure that Trick Room doesn't go up this very turn, because then the next turn I can probably go for, like, a Close Combat. I can bring in something else from the back, and I just really want this Porygon not to go for a Trick Room. So even though it was kind of obvious, I guess, that the Porygon would try and knock out this Indeedee this turn, I think it still makes a lot of sense for Joshua to, yeah, take that option away and look at what is waiting in the back here for Joshua.
Yeah, there's no rain, actually. Joshua is very convinced that Dondoso is the way to go. Not bringing Deep Caliber in this match specifically. There's the Dondoso. We already saw it, but Fernando's going to see it now. Dondoso, and if you bring Dondoso, you kind of have to assume Tatsugiri is in the back, so you can obviously try to go for a Clear Smog, predicting the switch. Obviously, Porygon is not in Trick Room. Torkoal is not in Trick Room either because Imprison was used in the last turn. You can go for a Trick Room now, but obviously you have to watch out for the potential close combat going into the Porygon. I wouldn't be surprised if Porygon decides to Terrasilize this turn and maybe Torkoal protects, so that way you can try to set up the Trick Room and just, you know, just make sure that your slow Pokemon can move first.
Yeah, I really like that play, actually, because there's not really a lot that can punish a Terra fighting from the Porygon 2 and a Trick Room. And then if you can get your Torkoal in Trick Room, I mean, we already know that, yeah, there is no Pelipper on Joshua's side, so no way to change the weather. And even though this looked kind of dicey for Fernando in the very beginning, I think this definitely is a way back here for him.
Yeah, Porygon is indeed going for a Terrasalization. Is a fighting type Terra. In this context, it's not an offensive one. It's pure defensively. We do see the Protect and Torkoal. The Terrasalization on Porygon is going to be able to help it hopefully survive. Joshua is able to actually understand that that was Fernando's best choice, so it's not even bothering going for a close combat. He was going for a Direct Claw, maybe hoping for some sleep or some paralysis, so that way he can maybe try to stop the Trick Room. Probably that was Joshua's only chance here. But as we were mentioning, Porygon went for the Trick Room and Torkoal protected, so now you are in Trick Room with two Pokemon that really enjoy being in Trick Room against a very fast Sneasler and a Dondozo that is currently not boosted.
Yeah, and it's so tough because what do you do now on Joshua's side? You really don't want to combine Dondozo and Tatsugiri because, yeah, there is the Clear Smog on the Torkoal to get rid of all those boosts. But then, well, if you don't combine, the Dondozo is just going to be so weak. And I think in this first game, it might be a little bit of a, well, not a mistake, but it definitely shows that Fernando was ready to take on this Dondozo here in the first game. And yeah, I mean, Fernando can just go for like a big Eruption and maybe even just recover with the Porygon because there's not a lot of damage being threatened over on Joshua's side at all.
Exactly. Sneasler didn't opt to protect here, so as you said, Torkoal is going to go for an Eruption, but because of the Psychic Seed from the Indeedee, you know, with the Psychic Terrain that was previously activated, Sneasler was able to take that pretty comfortably. It's also not a Charcoal Torkoal. Remember, guys, this is an Eject Back Torkoal, so it doesn't have that extra power. And Sneasler went for the close combat, and surprisingly, there's no recover from Porygon. Probably Porygon felt comfortable to just stay there, and maybe he can try to go for a recover this time. Obviously, Torkoal is free to keep spamming Eruptions. Now Sneasler probably needs to protect or switch out, and I'm really excited to see how Joshua is going to approach this next turn, as we do see a Tatsugiri switch and finally combining with Dondozo, giving a +2 on all of its stats.
Yeah, maybe Fernando was expecting a play like this on the previous turn. Maybe, yeah, tried to or wanted to do as much damage to the Dondozo as possible with his Terra Fighting Terra Blast. But now, because he did not go for a recover on the previous turn, that Porygon definitely would be in KO range of an Earthquake coming out from this Dondozo. And oh, but he caught it perfectly. Clear Smog, getting rid of all the boosts, not worried of any Terrestrialization, and just the recover. Perfect punish by Fernando.
Yeah, that was a perfect call there. Like, even if Dondozo doesn't actually get the boost, you kind of have to expect that Sneasler is going to either protect to delay that a little bit or switch out, and obviously then Dondozo is going to get the boost, and you can go for a Clear Smog that is not supposed to do damage. It's only there to, you know, disrupt Dondozo and make it waste basically all of its stat boost. And as you said, there was the option for Dondozo to go for a Terra Steel to cover for that, but obviously when you're front of a Torkoal that has overheat. Not only your option is going to be super tough to actually pull off. So a great play there by Fernando. Now just going for another option. Obviously, it's not going to do a lot of damage to a water type like Dondoso, but Dondoso does not have its boost anymore, so it's going to be really tough for it to actually break through this very bulky combo here.
Yeah, and with the Porygon, you can just like recover and for a couple of more turns, because yeah, Earthquake, that's definitely tickling the Torkoal, but the Porygon takes that like a champ. And even with that lefty's recovery, eventually, sure, Trick Room will be over. But yeah, I really like the spot that this Porygon 2 is in, because it definitely would be able to set up yet another Trick Room in the following turn if you wanted to.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of Pokemon you have in the bag. At this point, I imagine it can be Ursaluna, I guess, but you know, Dondoso has enough bulk to also like stall these turns. It doesn't have a lot of damage against the Porygon, of course, but with the leftovers, and Porygon also, I want to see how much damage a Terra Blast would do to Dondoso, especially now that we don't have, you know, the boost active on Dondoso anymore because of that previous Clear Smog. We do see a Protect, just stalling the Sun a little bit, also getting some leftovers recovery to be a little bit healthier, and I think this was the last turn of Trick Room, so as you said, Porygon can try to go for another Trick Room this time around if he wants to, depending on what Pokemon he has in the back, of course.
Yeah, it could just be another Protect Trick Room play. Of course, the Torkoal definitely not so powerful, but what you could also do is you could also go for an Overheat this turn, potentially activate this Eject Pack and get a free switch into whatever you have in the back, because yeah, with Torkoal being so slow, either Dondoso takes the knockout on the Torkoal or you get the free switch in, but instead it's going to be a Wave Crash, and I think with all the recover, that's not going to be damage that will stick, because that Porygon could just go for a recover next turn, but that is exactly what we were talking about. This Overheat now doing, yeah, a significant chunk of damage, and Porygon twisting the dimensions once again. And we can see a little bit more Overheat action probably, because yeah, this Dondoso is unaware.
Yeah, it's unaware, and now we have four more turns of Trick Room. Porygon obviously enjoys being in Trick Room. Even without the boost, Dondoso is still faster than Porygon, so being in Trick Room makes a lot of sense. Dondoso is just going to go for its Protect play to get more leftovers recovery. Try to see if that way you can, you know, maybe go for maybe like a critical hit on the Porygon with Wave Crash later. Torkoal obviously is going to go down from Earthquake, but as you mentioned, it's really important. Dondoso is ignoring Torkoal's drops. That Overheat did quite a bit of damage. I was surprised, even without the Sun, it did around 30% or so to Dondoso. So this Torkoal, even though usually you wouldn't like to spam Overheat because you're going to be -2, -4, against an unaware Dondoso, that's not a bad thing to have.
Yeah, and also powered up now, and now we might finally get to see that damage calc of that Terra Fighting from the Porygon that we've been waiting for a little bit. And yeah, I mean, Dondoso was sticking around for a while, but yeah, this is definitely a powerful combination of moves coming out here. Overheat still doing good damage, followed up now by the Terra Blast from the Porygon 2.
There is a Terra Blast from Porygon. Let's see how much damage this does into Dondoso. It's tickling Dondoso. Remember that it's an attack, I think, physical attack one, and it did around 10-15% or so. Torkoal finally goes on from Earthquake. Dondoso has finally gotten the KO into the Torkoal, and we're going to be able to see what's the last Pokemon waiting in the back from Fernando's side. Porygon obviously can just go for cover. Dondoso is slowly going down. Oh, actually, I actually missed that part. We already saw the 4 Pokemon on Fernando's side. Porygon is against the wall now, but Porygon, if there's one Pokemon that can probably try to, you know, win a 1 versus 3 scenario, 1 versus 2 scenario, is that Porygon with the recovery. It's so bulky, and especially because this Dondoso, as I mentioned, is already going down. But let's say the bad thing for Fernando is that we saw the damage from Terra Blast. It was not enough, and I think Dondoso probably is gonna necessarily try to avoid taking Wave Crash Rico if he wants to stay a little bit, you know, for longer. We do see a Terra Blast once again, and I think this is going to be around 10-15%. Let's see, probably around 15%. Dondoso's trying. He actually did decide to go for a Wave Crash, so it's going to probably take a little bit of recoil, but he probably thinks that's fine. You can just protect the next turn. Although if you protect before he goes for a recover, that's another thing you have to consider in this scenario.
Yeah, it might actually be right that this is a physical Terra Blast. Depending on how you train your Porygon, of course, if it gets the attack boost, it could still be a special move, but based on how little damage that did, Yeah, it might be a physical move, which you kind of don't really want because against Dondozo, it doesn't do that much at all. But yeah, yet another Trick Room, and I think we might reach a territory where we will need to talk about other winning conditions as well, like the timer might play a role in this game, but also the PP on the Porygon's moves, because yeah, both Recover and Trick Room, of course, you cannot use them infinitively, and eventually you will need to take some KOs as well with this Porygon.
Yeah, I think Porygon's pretty safe to go for a Recover here. I think if my math is correct, this is probably the 3rd or 4th Recover Porygon has gone to so far. So as we probably know, Recover, as you mentioned, is not a move that we have 16 uses anymore. It was actually a little bit nerfed this generation. Only has 8 uses. So, you know, if this is the 4th one, you don't have a lot of options for that. So we do see a Terra Blast. Porygon decides to attack. Dondozo probably is going to survive this because of the leftovers. Yeah, it does survive. And I would be surprised if you go for a Wave Crash here because you don't want to obviously kill yourself with the recoil. It's just going for a Heavy Slam, doing a nice chip of damage, getting some leftovers. Now you can go for a Protect. And as you said, we can be into the timer territory here.
Yeah, it just keeps going, this loop. It's so hard for the Porygon to break through that because, yeah, leftovers recover just a little bit too much on that Dondozo, and every now and then you have to go for another Trick Room, you have to go for Recover on the Porygon. So, yeah, of course, Joshua, I think, can time it in a way like he's the one controlling when this Dondozo will go down. It looks like maybe this is the turn. Terra Blast coming out.
No Protect.
And, okay, Dondozo goes down. Still one more turn.
Decision.
Trick Room, yeah.
Yeah, interesting decision from Joshua because, you know, Dondozo could have opted to protect that turn just to gain leftovers. Maybe he expected Porygon to go for a recovery. He didn't want to necessarily like let that happen. I think there's still one more turn of Trick Room, or at least 2.
Yep.
And maybe timing that switch for this Sneasler. If this is the last turn of Trick Room, Sneasler obviously can go for a Protect. But even with the Protect, this Porygon is not weak to close combat. So going for a Recover here, obviously, is probably the safest play. If you predict the Protect, you know your opponent's Sneasler has Protect. It's not a fake out variant. It's a Protect one. So very interesting course of action here. Obviously, it's Porygon against the wall. But as I said earlier, if there's one Pokemon that can maybe try to make snares like this, it is the Porygon 2 with that Eviolite Recover combination.
Yeah, and the Protect from the Sneasler, of course, seems so obvious, so I wouldn't be surprised if Fernando tried to maybe go after the Tatsugiri, or maybe try to go for a Recover, just to really use that final turn of Trick Room. Ice Beam coming out, and it was targeted into that Sneasler. Alright, so now Trick Room is over. We have this 2 versus 1 scenario, but because the Sneasler is this Psychic Seed variant, it has Unburden, so no Poison Touch can happen, and also, of course, no Fake Out could happen this previous turn. And now I think it looks like we're getting to see something that we don't get to see so often, which is that Tatsugiri will be the Pokemon that, yeah, has to do all the damage. And for some reason, I guess it just perfectly lines up that this Tatsugiri just happens to be Terra Ghost. I'm pretty sure it was not for this scenario, facing down against the Terra Blast, Terra Fighting Porygon 2, but works out so nicely here, and that is what Joshua is going for.
Yeah, it's a Terra Ghost, Safety Goggles, Tatsugiri, close combat, still doing a pretty good amount of damage. Let's see what this Tatsugiri decided to go for. It might be a Dragon Pulse. Yeah, it is a Dragon Pulse, just to maybe see if it's enough. Porygon is against the wall, but it's still able to get an attack off. Ice Beam into the Sneasler, that's enough for a knockout, but now the Porygon decided to not go for a recovery in the previous turn. Look how crucial that previous turn recovery would have been, because Porygon would have been probably out of range of this Tatsugiri, and there's a war with Fernando could have won this, but he decided to go for the offense, maybe predicting that the Protect was so obvious, and then like Sneasler was not going to go for it. As we do see the Tatsugiri with the Terastallization going for the last Dragon Pulse on the Porygon, and this is win for Joshua, getting the advantage 1-0 in this set between Venezuela and Portugal.
Yeah, it looked kind of rough at some point when we had the Dondozo on the field for so many turns. Clear Smoke got off, and in the sun, Dondozo just really didn't do any damage. But just over time, the Torkoal couldn't recover, and you just build up that damage over time. And even though the Porygon 2 could recover, yeah, in the end, wasn't quite able to turn this match around in a 1v3 scenario.
Yeah, and then those being the the duo that Joshua decided to bring in this game specifically paid off. We were saying, about the possibility of maybe benching Dondozo a little bit in this first game, bringing your rain mode, but Joshua, understanding what his team can do, said like, no, I want to bring Doso. I think Doso can help me. It's really bulky. Even if I lose the boost, as long as I keep my Dondoso as a water type, I can still maybe try to stall my opponent's, team and HP or maybe trick room turns. And that was a very interesting way of using Doso without the boost. And probably Joshua was aware of that. Like, okay, saying if I get clear smog, so be it. I'm still Doso. I'm still really bulky. I'm gonna be there getting leftovers recovery and then have my Sneasler from the end game. And that was a brilliant way of ending the game. It was close. As we said, if the Porygon would have gotten that last recover, maybe the scenario would have been different. So I wonder if Joshua maybe this time around decides to change things up a little bit and go for the rain core.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm also, I will have my eyes on because, Dondozo, even though it kind of won the match, it didn't feel that great, to be honest. So, game 2. Let's see if the Pelipper and Archelodon make an appearance. But then, of course, it also opens up the game for this continuous weather war. And maybe you don't want to play that game. Maybe Joshua is saying, yeah, I don't really mind the sun being up. Like, I can do my own thing. I can lean more into like the psychic kind of mode and the Dondozo instead of my rain core. But once again, it's going to be Indeedee, Male, and the Sneasler for Joshua. And then this time around, it's going to be the Incineroar and the Charizard for Fernando.
Yeah, remember that this Indeedee cannot touch Incineroar at all. It has Expanding Force as the only damaging move, and obviously Incineroar is a dark type, so it cannot be affected by the Expanding Force. Expanding Force would be only into the Charizard. Sneasler obviously is a fighting type Pokemon to go for a close combat with Incineroar. This Incineroar, though, is not a Terra Ghost variant. It's actually a Terra Grass variant.
Ooh.
So there's a Helping Hand. There's no Terastallization, so I think this is going to be a close combat into Incineroar. Yep, it is.
Big plays here on turn 1, as you were calling it. No Terra Ghost on this Incineroar. And with the Intimidate, you definitely need that Helping Hand boost to get this one-hit KO. But once again, Joshua starting off the game with a big lead here in terms of Pokemon. Sneasler once again taking a big KO here, but this time around, Heatwave connects from the Charizard.
Yeah, Heatwave connects, and even though Sneasler went for a close combat dropping special defense, because of the previous boost from the Psychic Seed, it was able to tank that Heatwave, especially because even though Charizard is choice specs, there was no Sun, so the Heatwave did a respectable damage on both Pokemon, but not quite enough to be able to KO the Sneasler. Sneasler is still here. I think, a close combat into the Porygon is pretty obvious, and this time around, Porygon could go for a Terastallization to avoid taking that super effective damage, but it opted not to. It takes that, and we probably are going to see a Choice Specs Heat Wave into both Pokemon. If it connects, Charizard to be faster. It is faster, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is trick from Heat Wave play from Fernando here.
Yeah, the big difference between game 1 and 2 is that this time around, the Indeedee did not get all the damage on the Charizard, and instead, the Charizard was still healthy enough to take like a Dire Claw without any issues. So nice play there by Fernando, getting the double knockout, and now, well, Joshua is forced to bring in both Tatsugiri and Dondozo. And the one thing, though, that I guess is still, like, helping Joshua a little bit is the fact that Torkoal is not on the field yet. So we have a Charizard that is locked into Heatwave, but if you're Joshua, you can kind of expect that the last Pokemon would be the Torkoal. So if you can maybe go for an Earthquake, hit the Torkoal on the switch in this turn, maybe there's still a way to play this.
Yeah, and remember that Dondozo is going to be boosted now in speed as well, and we are in the Trick Room scenario, so depending on how this Dondozo is trained, there is a world where Dondozo is slower than Charizard. I don't know if that was revealed in the previous game, but Charizard obviously is a Pokemon that is known for being relatively fast. I wouldn't be surprised if it's max speed, timid nature. So I'm curious to see the interaction here. Obviously, as you mentioned, there is a Torkoal in the back. You can still bring the Torkoal and get the Clear Smog later. We haven't seen any Terastallization yet, so we do see a Porygon 2 switch here. I wonder if this is the Torkoal to get the sun-boosted Heat Waves. It is the Torkoal. Let's see if Joshua called that and went for the Earthquake, as you were saying, or if he just went for a safe Protect here. Heat Wave, it's going to come down. It doesn't avoid the Dondozo. It does a respectable 30% damage, and there's the Earthquake. How much damage is this going to do into the Torkoal, though?
Yeah, it's not gonna KO, but maybe with a critical hit. Yeah, not quite. Good damage for sure, but now we have the scenario that we talked about at the very beginning in Team Preview. Dondozo could go for a Terra Steel to try and avoid this Clear Smog, but then, yeah, you really opened yourself up for those Fire-type moves from the Charizard. So, Yeah, I think this is a kind of safe Clear Smoke here from Fernando. Yeah, do you want to give up all those boosts, or do you want to be hit with a very powerful, super effective Heat Wave by this Choice Specs Charizard? I think, yeah, both options don't sound very great, but if you can get hit by the Clear Smog, I mean, at least you can maybe maneuver a little bit more under Trick Room. So if you can time this correctly, maybe you can create a situation where the Dondozo can actually knock out the Charizard while Trick Room is still up.
Yeah, and this is going to be a really, really annoying scenario for Joshua, as you said, because in order to avoid losing your boost with Clear Smoke, you need to Terrasilize into Steel type, and because you are not going to get hit by the Clear Smoke, you're still going to be slower in the Charizard, so Charizard is going to be able to click that Heat Wave first, which is something that, of course, you don't want as a Steel type. So I think there's no other option for Joshua to just say like, okay, let's just do your Torkoal, click the Clear Smog, unless he has faith that the Dondozo with the Terra Steel is going to survive a Choice Specs Heat Wave boosted, Sun boosted, sorry, from Charizard. I think he is considering that option. He's going back and forth between that. He's really thinking, what's my best option here? Do I just let the Torkoal with the Clear Smog, or do I have faith that the Dondozo is going to survive the Heat Wave, or just hope for a miss? We do see the Terrasalization, as we have been saying, is a Steel type Dondozo, is going to be able to avoid the Clear Smog. But let's say if Fernando maybe decided to go for an Overheat as well, or if he is just committed into the Clear Smog, saying like, okay, if you want to avoid this, you have to become Steel type, and then my Charizard is going to hit you super hard.
Oh,
there is
wow.
the Overheat! The call, this is probably enough. That is a clean one-hit KO. Amazing play from Fernando, saying like, I think you're going to go for the Terra. I'm going to go all or nothing. And Dondozo goes down. And now it's going to be a Heat Wave from Charizard against a Dragon Water type like Tatsugiri that is technically going to resist this. It's 4 times resisted, but I wonder how much damage this is going to do. It's still a Charizard in the Sun. Choice Specs boosted, and as we are seeing right now, Porygon now takes Torkoal's place because of that eject pack that was activated.
What a play by Fernando. I mean, it looked as if, like, the Dondozo, like, yeah, you can't just go for Terra Steel right there, right? I mean, you just open yourself up against that Heat Wave, but Fernando was seeing through this, was like, I think while Clear Smog might be, like, really safe, or might be, like, really putting the pressure on the Dondozo to force the Terra Steel, but he didn't want to potentially risk missing Heat Wave on the Dondozo, and instead was saying, okay, like, this is the one chance my opponent has to try and get back into this game, and I will cover for this with the Overheat. So yeah, fantastic play there by Fernando. And yeah, now only the Tatsugiri left for Joshua, and yeah, even though this Heat Wave missed the previous turn, and even though Charizard and Torkoal don't really have great ways of dealing with that Tatsugiri, as long as Porygon 2 is around, I'm not worried for Fernando at all here in this situation.
Yeah, and keep in mind also that this Charizard is one of those bears that's actually carrying Dragon Pulse because of all these Dragon types that are around in the format. And Charizard was locked to Heat Wave, so Fernando's saying like, okay, I understand that Charizard can become another win condition. Porygon is probably going to be able to win this game as well, but he just said, I want to be safe with my Charizard. This is the last turn of Trick Room. I can just switch out, sack my Torkoal, and then I bring back Charizard, and with the Dragon Pulse option, you should be able to get the KO on this Tatsugiri, especially with Sun. I don't know if this is the last turn of Sun, and obviously without Sun, Charizard is going to lose that solar power boost, but I think it's very difficult for this tiny Tatsugiri to actually break through Charizard, and this Porygon 2 that is looking so healthy here.
Yeah, you would need to hope that you're outspeeding here, but I think, yeah, that's not happening. Charizard on those teams usually train just for max speed, and yeah, just to make sure, we are also seeing a Terrestrialization coming out here from the Charizard, just so that those water-type moves would do a little bit less damage. I mean, might as well, right? We didn't Terrestrialize so far, so might as well show off this Terra Ghost Charizard, but yeah, that Dragon Pulse, more than enough to knock out the Tatsugiri, and yeah, the series is tied up 1-1, and once again, what a call by Fernando with the Clear Smog versus the Overheat, deciding to go predict this Terra. Wow, like, I'm still not over that.
Yeah, I think it was a very, very intense game. Obviously, as we have been saying, this is technically a weather war, but so far, we haven't seen the rain composition from Joshua. He was very probably convinced that Dondoso, Tatsugiri, Sneasler, and Indeedee Mail was probably the best way he had to approach this game. Of course, Indeedee having Imprison, Trick Room to avoid the Trick Room, but the way Fernando has been approaching this game is really, really good because he is not going for a trick in turn one. He's trying to just get as much damage as possible into Tindidi if Fernando leads with it, so then he can have the Torkoal and the Porygon in the back to set up like a mid-game trick room or so. So that's been great. We are tied 1-1. I wonder if this time, finally, we are going to see the Pelipper maybe making an appearance here to, mitigate the damage from those fire type attacks, or if Joshua is still going to stick to that Dondoso Tatsugiri combo with Sneasler and Didi. Maybe he just wants to rethink how he want to approach that game, but it's definitely come down to the wire here.
Yeah, and now we're getting into game 3, and Joshua for Venezuela has to win this match if he wants to keep Venezuela's hopes alive here to make it out of the group stage. Once again, we're seeing this Charizard and Incineroar lead from Fernando, and once again, it is the Indeedee Mail and Sneasler lead from Joshua. Do you think either player has reasons to switch up their play from game 2 that we just saw with a helping hand close combat?
Exactly. In the previous game, we saw a close combat helping hand going into the Incineroar just to ensure the knockout. Of course, Indeedee cannot touch this Incineroar, but that was a hard commitment because if you don't touch the Charizard, because if you're clicking helping hand, you're not doing damage to the Charizard. And Charizard was very, healthy to just spam heat waves, and that eventually allowed the Porygon to come and click Trick Room with a simple heat wave from Charizard that we know is faster than Indeedee. Of course, we have to risk the heat wave connecting, but I think we're going to see a switch up here. There's a Dark Claw, maybe hoping for some status condition. There's no status condition, but there's a miss on the heat wave, missing on the Indeedee, and Incineroar once again didn't want to terastallize. Joshua saying like, okay, I don't want your Charizard to be healthy this time around, and he actually doubles into it because the Expanding Force is obviously not doing any damage to a Dark type like Incineroar, as we do see a knockoff going into the Indeedee just to put it down to its Focus Sash at 1 HP.
Yeah, Joshua's controller might be at low battery, but his Pokemon still have the power to keep on fighting. They're knocking out the Charizard, one of the main damage dealers on Fernando's side, just out of the fight. And once again, it is Heat Wave, like in the first game, missing the Sneasler, this time missing the Indeedee. And yeah, this makes Joshua's position much better because now he's threatening helping hand close combat into the Incineroar. He's threatening a potential Imprison to maybe shut down the Trick Room. But look at that. It is the Pelipper and the Archaludon in the back this time. So Joshua switching things up for this final game with everything on the line here for his team. I kind of like the decision, especially if you can manage to take one more knockout, because then you're kind of guaranteed that the weather would be on your side.
Yeah, exactly, because we probably have to assume the Torkoal is the last one for Fernando, right? So if you're able to get that one last KO, you can then bring the Pelipper. But Joshua is saying, like, you know what? I'm going to show my cards already. You're going to know that I'm not bringing the Doso Tatsugiri. Most likely, if you see this Archaludon, you probably have to assume there's no solo Doso or solo Tatsugiri. Most likely the last one is the Pelipper. Decided to not go for a helping hand, probably trying to anticipate a potential terastallization from the Incineroar, thinking if I helping hand here, you terastallize, I'm just gonna waste my time because it's not gonna be enough anyways. As we do see a knockoff going into the DD slot, which is now their Charizard. Getting rid of the Assault Vest, I don't know how impactful that can be for later tunes. Remember that Porygon is a special attacker, has the option of going for a fighting Terra Blast into a Pokemon like Archaludon. And also there is a Torkoal most likely in the back, which is another powerful special attacker, and this Archaludon's Terra Grass, so you don't want to terastallize. You're kind of pinned here. If the Porygon goes for a Terra Blast, you're going to take so much damage, and if you Terra to not be weak to it, now you can be hit with this fire type attacks. So even though the Archaludon Pelipper on paper sounds great here still, getting rid of that Assault Vest could be a problem for Joshua.
Yeah, I really like the play here, just a call out here, because even if there was like some sort of Imprison coming up, knocking out the Indeedee with the Incineroar before the Porygon sets up Trick Room, that definitely is a nice play here, but not quite enough to get the knockout on the Sneasler. And, well, Archaludon will get its special attack stat reduced, notably, but still will be able to get off a move this turn. And yeah, if Joshua can make this count, maybe do a ton of damage to this Torkoal on the switch in. Yeah, I mean, Fernando definitely would have hoped that the Sneasler was going down that turn, right?
Yeah, and remember that body press is not affected by parting shot, so I would have liked to see a body press into the Porygon. Maybe you just double out into that slot, because Archaludon did get the stamina boost when he switched in because of the knockoff. So it was +1, but probably Joshua said there's no way that combination KOs this Porygon. And probably he was suspecting the Terra as well, but he decided to go into the Incineroar because obviously Incineroar was in range of any attack probably from this Sneasler or Archaludon because of how low health it was, even though it ate the Citrus Berry. And of course, Incineroar going for a parting shot, it was not necessarily affecting that body press damage, but it was important to keep it healthy or at least alive in the back. But Torkoal took so much damage, it's around 40% right now. And there's still a Pelipper in the back that you have to assume your Fernando is going to be brought in this turn.
But now it could be huge that that there is no more Assault Vest on this Archaludon, because even if Pelipper switches in, I think the combination of Overheat and potentially Terra fighting Terra Blast could be enough to get the knockout on the Archaludon either way. And it looks also like, yeah, Joshua, he couldn't really find the right move here because it's such a tricky spot to be in. Overheat coming out into the Archaludon, still doing a decent chunk of damage. No terrestrialization though from Fernando, so let's see if this is just another Ice Beam, maybe to try and knock out the Sneasler. Meanwhile, Eject Pack activating will allow Torkoal to come back later in to reset the sun. But yeah, now this means Incineroar will be forced on the field once more.
Yeah, and Porygon, as you said, didn't go for a terrestrialization, so if it's attacking the Archaludon slot, it should be with an Ice Beam. But it's not attacking the Archaludon, it's going for a Terra Blast into what was the Sneasler, and now it's a Pelipper. There's an Electro Shot, but it was -1 because of the previous parting shot, so I wonder if this is going to be enough to KO that Incineroar, a neutral special attack, because I have to assume it's going into Incineroar. That was a Torkoal before, and it is not enough. Incineroar survives with around 10%. That is bad news for Joshua. I imagine he was hoping to get that KO on Torkoal or into the Incineroar if it came in, which is what eventually happened. Now, even though it's a 4 versus 3, you have the Pokemon advantage. Although your team is super low health, and this Porygon is still looking super healthy here at 100%.
Yeah, this is so scary for Joshua because all of his Pokemon are, as you were saying, they're at such low HP, but if you can just manage to outlast this Trick Room and get into a position where you have Pelipper on the field, and like Pelipper Sneasler could maybe 2v3 this the remaining Pokemon for Fernando. But how do you get into the spot? That's the question for Joshua. He's saying that, okay, I need this Pelipper around for later. Brings in the Indeedee. Of course, Takeout is not an option, but Ice Beam plus another attack, yeah, might be enough to get the knockout. But where did this Incineroar target?
It went into the Indeedee switch, which was a Pelipper, but Archaludon, most importantly, survives with that sliver of health and is able to go for a body press here that is +3, I think. Getting rid of the Incineroar, making sure that Incineroar cannot get any more attack. Even if Incineroar goes for a parting shot there, it's going to hit the Torkoal at +3. I think it's going to be enough to KO that 35% health Torkoal that was in the back. And now you have weather control for the rest of the game because Fernando doesn't have the option to switch out anymore. However, I think there's still one more turn of Trick Room here. Sneasler comes in, you can easily protect here, sack the Archaludon, and then just hope for a pin into the Porygon probably next turn. Or maybe he wants to attack, but I think the protect is super safe here. If this is the last turn of Trick Room, which we cannot tell for sure, you can protect, set the Archaludon, and then you can bring the Pelipper and double that Porygon with a close combat Hurricane, because the Porygon, if it wants to avoid the super effective close combat, it has to terrestrialize, which is going to make it weak to the Hurricane. We do see this Sneasler here protecting, and we're going to see probably the Archaludon going down, but that's not too bad for Joshua because, as I said, you can bring the Pelipper, get the Rain, and as long as this is the last turn of Trick Room, I think you should be able to close this out.
Yeah, I really like the line that you were proposing there, as Eruption finally knocks out that Archaludon that was around for so long. And yeah, Trick Room is now over, so I really like the play that you mentioned, which would be to double up the Porygon now with Hurricane and Close Combat, covering a potential Terra fighting coming out from the Porygon. We know it doesn't have Protect, so if this combination of move is enough to get the knockout, and I think it should be, Yeah, then it's just the Torkoal, and yeah, Torkoal might be able to knock out the Sneasler, but yeah, I guess that Pelipper, you only have Overheat as your like main way of dealing damage. Maybe though, if you can Overheat knock out the Pelipper. Oh, but it's the Weather Ball. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I think Hurricane might have been the way to cover for the Terra Fighting, but yeah, let's see if Fernando even goes for it at this point.
Yeah, I think Hurricane Close Combat was probably safer, the combination of moves, unless he's thinking that Close Combat is not going to be enough. And we do see the Terastallization. I think we saw that Joshua locked Weather Ball, and that's not going to be great news for him because the Porygon had nothing to lose here. It's your last chance of maybe have a chance to win in this. You just have to hope that Joshua maybe doesn't go for that combination of attack. There's no protect also from Torkoal. That Close Combat is doing around 45%, and I think this Weather Ball, even though it's in the rain, is not going to be enough, most likely, unless a critical hit happens to KO this Porygon. It is not. Porygon survives. Her option is going to easily KO that Sneasler from 10 HP, and Porygon is probably going to be able to go for a Trick Room here, just attack. That was a completely different scenario than the one we were describing. I think if you go for a Hurricane there, you just spin the Porygon and you win the game. But unfortunately, Joshua was probably a little bit nervous there that maybe the opponent would not Terastallize and he wanted to get as much damage as possible with Weather Ball. But that is probably gain for Fernando now.
Yeah, well, with that Terastallization and that final Trick Room, that Porygon over the course of this battle really set up Trick Rooms a couple of times, but this one will be the crucial one, enabling now, yeah, just another attack, I guess. Well, Torkoal doesn't really have a great way of hitting this Pelipper, as we were saying, just trying to go for the Clear Smog, but more importantly, that Porygon 2 is still around, and with the Ice Beam, yeah, that combination of moves should be enough to get the knockout here, and yeah, that might just be it for Fernando here.
Yeah, really unfortunate for Joshua and really, really great for Fernando. He went for his win condition. He played his out and just say like, okay, if you go for that play, you go for that play. This is my only chance. I need to go for it. And what a roller coaster of emotions. I think Joshua had the game. He only had to double the Porygon. Maybe he was not expecting the Porygon to Terastallize, but honestly, that could have been a win for Joshua and for Venezuela. Amazing game for both players. Really